You ever notice how your mind jumps to conclusions before you even realize it? You see a shadow move, a phone vibrates, a text comes in, and immediately, your brain has a story ready. You feel tension in your chest or a flicker of doubt, but you don't stop to ask why. It's subtle, almost invisible, and yet, it shapes the way you move through the world every single day. You think it's random, but what if it's not? What if there's a hidden logic your mind follows, one you never consciously chose, but that quietly steers your choices? Most people never notice it. I remember walking down a street I'd never been on before, and I caught myself avoiding cracks in the pavement. Not thinking, just reacting. Later, I asked myself, why? And I realized I had built this invisible map of safe paths in my mind. Psychology reveals that our brains are constantly seeking patterns, even in chaos, even when there's no real danger. It's like we're wired to impose order on randomness. But why? I wasn't sure. Not fully. Yesterday, I was scrolling through a newsfeed and paused on a story that seemed vaguely familiar. I couldn't place why it felt important. My first thought was, I've seen this before, and yet I hadn't. I realized I was chasing a pattern that didn't exist. Researchers suggest this isn't unusual. Our cognitive patterns are designed to fill gaps, to predict, to make the unpredictable manageable. It's comforting, in a way, but it also tricks us. Have you ever noticed how you remember details that confirm a suspicion, but forget the ones that contradict it? It's subtle. A slight tilt of the head, a facial expression, a word emphasized just a fraction differently. Human behavior isn't random in when it feels like it. We're always searching for order, and sometimes the order we find is just an illusion. I used to think my hesitation in conversations was laziness. Later, I realized it was a pattern in my brain, noticing emotional triggers, weighing subtle signals before committing words. And yet, I never acknowledged it consciously. Most people would just call it shyness or indecision. But there's a quiet architecture behind every choice, a scaffolding of invisible decisions that we rarely see. It's strange how everyday life is full of these micro patterns. A friend laughs at something I didn't, and my mind rewinds, tries to reconstruct why. Did I mishear? Am I missing context? We often mistake the brain's effort to impose coherence for understanding itself. And here's a thought: what if we only see the patterns we want to see? What if some of the connections are imagined, yet they guide our decisions as powerfully as real ones? I once noticed that whenever I walked into a room, I always gravitated to the same spot, even when other chairs were free. At first, I thought it was comfort, habit. Later, I realized my mind had categorized that position as optimal, safe, predictable. It felt invisible, yet it influenced my interactions, the way I listened, even the way people responded to me. These are cognitive patterns quietly shaping our lives, often before we realize it. Take a moment to observe yourself now. Maybe you catch a slight unease, a small twitch of attention. That's your brain scanning for patterns. Researchers suggest this happens constantly. You might think you're reacting to the world, but more often, the world is just triggering a script your mind wrote long ago. And here's the subtle twist: sometimes, the pattern isn't even yours. It's learned, inherited, absorbed from people around you. I catch myself repeating phrases, mimicking gestures, almost unconsciously. Emotional triggers embedded by context, past interactions, small habitual cues. Most people never pause to see the invisible threads connecting their reactions. The street corner, the coffee shop, a glance from someone in passing, they all contain fragments of patterns we crave. We notice, we catalog, we react. And in that moment of noticing, a question arises: how much of what I'm experiencing now is real, and how much is the brain filling in the blanks? I remember sitting alone at a diner, watching a man repeatedly tap his spoon against his cup. I caught myself making assumptions about him: nervous, impatient, distracted. And yet, I realized I was projecting a pattern from my own past, my own experiences of waiting and impatience. Human behavior is a mirror, but it's always partially distorted by our internal maps. Even in chaos, the brain finds connections. You see a sequence in numbers, a rhythm in voices, a pattern in movements. These connections aren't always real, yet they influence decision-making. Even tiny ones: how you step, what you notice, what you avoid. The trick is subtle. We feel certainty when there is none. I once argued with someone online, convinced their tone was aggressive. Later, reviewing the words, it was neutral. My mind had filled in the gaps, created a narrative, assigned emotional weight. It was comfortable to believe, in a way. Comfortable, but misleading. Researchers suggest this is common. Our brains prefer a story, a pattern, even if it bends reality. Low moments reveal so much. A friend's delayed reply triggers a cascade of assumptions. A stranger's glance sparks a mini-story in your mind. And most of the time, we never see the invisible cognitive scaffolding holding it all together. I catch myself doing it daily, questioning why I reacted, before even asking myself what actually happened. There's something intimate about noticing this. It feels like seeing the machinery inside your own head. Emotional triggers, subtle signals, decisions that seem spontaneous, they're all part of a hidden architecture. Sometimes I wonder if the patterns we follow, consciously or unconsciously, define the boundaries of our experiences more than the experiences themselves. I walk past a playground and notice children clustering in patterns, movements echoing one another, and I think about my own patterns, how habits, reactions, and choices cluster across years, echoing silently. There's beauty here, but also unease. Noticing this doesn't solve anything. It just illuminates what was previously invisible. Do you ever feel like reality is almost too much to process, yet your brain makes it seamless? That's the paradox. Chaos surrounds us, but we feel continuity. The continuity is not outside, it's inside. In the architecture of perception, in the way subtle signals are interpreted, in the patterns that shape your life without your knowing. Sometimes, I question myself. Did I choose my habits, or did they choose me? Did I notice the patterns, or was I simply noticing what the brain wanted me to notice? And in those moments, I realize the mind is not an observer, it's a constructor. Constantly weaving meaning, constantly predicting, constantly seeking coherence in chaos. And perhaps that's the quiet revelation. We live inside the stories our brains tell, even when the world offers none. We are pattern seekers, decision makers, guided by invisible frameworks, often unaware of the strings we follow. Emotional triggers, cognitive patterns, subtle signals, they form a language we rarely speak out loud. I find myself thinking about the ordinary moments differently now. The glance that makes my stomach tighten, the laugh that feels familiar, the hesitation before a decision, all are quiet clues. Tiny, almost imperceptible, yet they reveal more than I ever realized. Sometimes, the brain's pattern making is like a slow dance between what is real and what feels like it should be real. Sometimes, I pause while walking down the street, noticing how people cross paths, almost unconsciously following invisible rhythms. Even the way I adjust my pace, the way my eyes scan a scene, follows patterns I didn't consciously choose. The more I watch, the more I see how everything is interconnected, and yet how much is purely a projection of my own mind. I've started noticing small patterns in myself I ignored before. How I tap my fingers when thinking, how I linger on certain thoughts, how I circle back to the same memories. Even the tiniest movements can carry meaning, subtle signals my mind is always sending. Whether I acknowledge them or not, It's like living inside a code I only partly understand. So next time you pause, hesitate, or feel inexplicably drawn to something, notice it. Notice how your brain reaches for order, even when there is none. The patterns are there, shaping perception, guiding choice, whispering quietly behind every thought. And maybe the most revealing part isn't the pattern itself, but your awareness of it. In the end, reality is not as random as it seems, yet not as controlled as we imagine. And walking through it, noticing the silent architectures within, is an act of